We are continuing our training camp coverage, and now I would like to bring in the former Super Bowl coach, now serving as an analyst for NFL Network, Brian Billick. Brian, how you doing today?
Doing great this afternoon.
Looking at this team now, the Vikings in 2020, what's your take on this team, amidst COVID-19 being here right now?
Well, obviously that's the qualifier for everybody. You don't know how all these teams are going to deal with this, how we're going to deal with it as a league. But if you just set that aside, if you may, I think it's an excellent transition for Minnesota. I mean, the commitment to Zimmer and that this is the direction we want to go, that means a lot. And particularly in a transition, when you take 15 draft choices, it is in a transition. Now, you certainly have your core there, but it is a transition. And to give that kind of stability to it, that's what good organizations do. And certainly in the NFC, which is a wide open affair this year, in my opinion.
For sure. And I'll have you put on your coaching hat. Of course, we all know you were assistant coach here with the Vikings, 94 to 98. But you've been a part of, coaching extensions, both as an assistant coach, having the head coach, Denny Green getting the extension, and then when you were in Baltimore. When you get that extension, does the sense of urgency increase at all, or is one of those things where you still have to, say, okay, there's still a job at hand. Let's not get too high or too low?
Well, you always try to keep a certain even keel, but the longer you're with a team, it always creates that sense of urgency. Because at the end of the day, this is the NFL, which stands for not for long. And an extension's all well and good. All that means is you're going to get paid, okay? It doesn't mean necessarily, you still have to go out and win. And I'm sure Mike Zimmer obviously feels that for lack of a better word, pressure to, yes, they've got a good football team in a division and in a conference that is absolutely wide open. There's absolutely no reason why, particularly when you're talking about having a Dalvin Cook, having stability at quarterback, having a great defense, that you can't be in the thick of this and the expectations that come with it, not only from ownership, but obviously from the fans as well.
You talk about, schemes, and like yourself, Gary Kubiak, who's running this offense, is under the Bill Walsh coaching tree. How do you see, this Gary Kubiak-led offense thriving under him, play action passing, timing, outside zone run schemes? How do you see that playing out for the Vikings this year?
Well, Gary's as good as there is, as good as there's ever been. He's an outstanding coach, and he does a great job of isolating exactly what his team can do and putting players in a position that are rule specific. He knows exactly what he wants. And when you begin with the running game of a Dalvin Cook, let's remember he comes out of that history of a Terrell Davis and Portis and Anderson and McGahee. Running backs in his style vis-a-vis Mike Shanahan and his history have always prospered. It's going to be based around them. And then with the play, you say, the play action, the wider and deeper drops, I think fit Kirk Cousins very, very well. Obviously, it was a loss to lose Diggs, but they addressed it in the draft like they did so many things when they picked up Justin Jefferson. And when you obviously still have Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph, this is a team that's going to do very, very well under the leadership of Gary Kubiak.
The Vikings, they had average 220 passing yards last year. Last year, of course, Kirk's statistical best year as far as efficiency. But with 220 passing yards a game, do you expect more from the Vikings this year with Kirk Cousins having, a more leadership role thrust upon him?
Well, I think he'll prosper very well with Gary Kubiak. And having said that, obviously the pressure is you got to make it happen. You got to win. And until you do, you're going to hear that skepticism. You're going to hear those critics that say, yeah, you've done this, you've done that, you've put up some great numbers, and that but's going to continue until you get it done.
Play action, Cousins, Thielen, he's got it! Inside the 5. That's the throw that could very well erase all the conversation about whether or not Kirk Cousins can show up big in the big game.
Again, with the leadership of Gary Kubiak, I think they have the elements in place. Again, you got to know they're going to probably play pretty good defense. They're going to maybe able to make a run at this thing and have all the tools available to him to indeed come to fruition and get this thing done, not only for himself, but obviously for the long-starved Minnesota Viking fans.
Being a guy that's, coached tight ends for the Minnesota Vikings and then coaching a guy like Shannon Sharp, what do you think of, this Irv Smith Jr., Kyle Rudolph dynamic at tight end for the Vikings?
Well, it could be outstanding. And it's kind of the vogue thing, isn't it? Everybody loves to have two tight ends. Why? Because the tight end is the best mismatch you have on the team. whether it be a linebacker, a safety. That tends to be a better mismatch, particularly when you have two athletes like Smith and Rudolph. And then the dilemma it creates for defensive coordinators, because if I have two tights in, 12 personnel, what do I have on the field? Obviously, base, because they're going to run the ball. But now these guys can break out and look like a 3 and 4 wide offense. I can put nickel in. I can put dime in. But now they can get back into the eye. And again, let's remember, it's Dalvin Cook. Two tight ends. They can pound away at you if you put that smaller defense on the field. So to have two tight ends, the caliber of Rudolph and Smith, is a huge advantage for Minnesota.
And having, these young cornerbacks, Mike Zimmer is known for the development of these young cornerbacks, but having a guy like Jeff Gladney, a guy bringing him in, draft him in the first round, Cameron Dantzler, what realistic expectations should Vikings fans have for, these young corners?
Well, it is a process, obviously, in terms of the maturation of the corners. Minnesota classically is a team that plays a lot of two deep, which certainly helps in terms of kind of protecting the corners. Now, they do multiple other things. They're going to play man. They're going to get into a single high safety and play three deep as well. But typically, they're going to be put in a position to have success, whether it's in two deep with help in behind, obviously with some excellent safeties, as you have with Smith and Harris. But also, put themselves in a position of just don't get beat deep. We understand things can happen underneath, but don't give up the big plays. And that's been a hallmark as well. And that falls to a degree on corner. It falls on the whole team to a degree. But that's the big thing. Last year, they were a top 10 team and not giving up big plays. They typically are there, and I'm sure it's going to be a priority as well.
One thing that, a lot of people aren't talking about that I feel like he's one of the most underrated guys in the NFL, Danielle Hunter. What's your take on him?
Well, it's one of those things that particularly it is always it's development, and you watch a young player that develops and increases his role and what is asked of him. They clearly are looking for that guy that can be that dominant player that dictates protection. That's what you're always looking for. Mike Zimmer's always had a very effective front seven, very solid. Obviously, losing Linville Joseph is a lot, so there are some adjustments there. They got Anthony Barr, certainly is a factor in terms on the outside, and occasionally bring him. But certainly it's something that they would love for him to kind of continue, and it's about time.
And lastly, you always use the word Festivus Maximus, getting to that Super Bowl. But before we get there, you got to win the NFC North. Granted, make that wild card spot. Having 7 spots, it raises, it gives you more of an opportunity to make it to the playoffs. But your view, do you think the Vikings have enough to win the NFC North this year?
They do. They have enough to win the conference and go to the Super Bowl. They do. Now, it's very competitive. Like we said earlier, the AFC, you kind of got the two teams at the top with Kansas City and Baltimore. In the NFC, I mean, obviously, whether it's the Packers or the Vikings, over on the West, San Francisco is going to continue to be a factor. Seattle looks to be better. In the East, I think both Dallas and Philadelphia are going to be hurt. I think Mike McCarthy going to Dallas was a great pickup. We haven't even talked about the NFC South, where you've got Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. I mean, in that division. So you legitimately, in my opinion, have 7, 8, 9 teams that can legitimately lay claim to say we are good enough to make this run, not just to make the playoff, but get to the conference championship, get to the Super Bowl, and the Vikings are clearly one of those teams.